You ever have one of those problems that just won't go away? I mean, you throw everything you have at it and it just keeps coming back, sometimes even stronger than before. Well, today we're going to dive into exactly why that happens. And more importantly, we'll look at a different way of thinking that can help us finally see the solution that's been hiding in plain sight all along.
I mean, take a look at this. This is a story I hear all the time. Your business is booming, demand is through the roof. So what do? The logical thing, right? You hire more people to keep up. But then, bam, customer satisfaction starts to tank. It's this maddening paradox where doing the right thing, the successful thing, somehow breeds failure. How on earth does that happen? And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? Why do our best, most logical efforts sometimes blow up in our faces? Well, the answer isn't about just trying harder or finding that one single person to blame. Nope. It's about fundamentally changing how we see the problem in the first place. Right. So when those obvious, straightforward fixes just don't cut it, that is a massive clue. It's a flashing neon sign telling you you're not dealing with a simple A to B problem. You're dealing with a system. And to get a handle on a system, you can't just look at the individual parts. You've got to see the invisible web of connections that holds them all together. So, what are the telltale signs of one of these systemic problems? Well, for starters, it's that problem that's always there. It's like a bad penny. It just keeps turning up. It's that feeling of déjà vu where your brilliant solution from last month has somehow become the cause of this month's disaster. And cause and effect, they're totally out of sync. The thing you do here today might cause a huge issue over there 6 months from now. It feels like everything is tangled up, and you're just watching the same frustrating patterns play out over and over and over again. So, how do we untangle this mess? It really requires a fundamental shift in how we think. We have got to stop thinking in straight lines and start thinking in circles. And this slide really shows you what I mean. On the left, that's open loop thinking. It's how we're normally taught to see the world. You get some information, you take an action, you get a result, the end. Simple, linear. But on the right, that's the systems view. That's closed loop thinking. See the difference? The result of your action doesn't just end the story. It creates new information, what we call feedback, which then circles back and influences your next action. It's not a one-way street. It's a continuous, dynamic circle. Here's another great way to picture it. Think about the difference between a process and a system. A process is a simple recipe, right? It's linear. For an airline, it's ticketing, departure, flight, one step after another. But a system, that's the whole interconnected web. The price of a ticket affects how many people fly, which affects the airline's revenue, which affects how much they can spend on service quality, which, you guessed it, loops all the way back around and influences what people are willing to pay for a ticket in the first place. See, everything is connected to everything else. Okay, so if systems are all about these feedback circles, what are they actually made of? What are the basic building blocks? Well, this is the really wild part. It turns out that pretty much every complex system you can think of, from a rainforest to the global economy, is built from just two super simple types of feedback loops. First up, we have the reinforcing loop. I want you to think of this as the engine of growth. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. It just gets bigger and bigger. It takes a tiny change and just amplifies it, pushing it further and further in the same direction. This is what's behind explosive growth, but it can also be behind a dramatic spiraling collapse. And a perfect everyday example of this is good old word of mouth. It's so simple, right? The more happy customers you have, the more they go out and tell their friends. That buzz, that word of mouth brings in even more new customers. And what do? They go out and create even more word of mouth. The effect just keeps reinforcing itself, and boom, your growth just takes off. And when you plot that over time, what does it look like? You get this classic J-curve, this exponential growth. It starts out kind of slow. You barely notice it, and then all of a sudden, it just shoots for the moon as that reinforcing effect really kicks into high gear. All right, so that's building block number one. Number two is the balancing loop. Now, if the reinforcing loop is the gas pedal, the balancing loop is the brakes. This is the engine of stability. Its whole job is to seek out a goal, a target, and keep things there. The thermostat in your house is the absolute perfect analogy for this. Room gets too hot, the AC kicks on. Gets too cold, the heat turns on. It's always working to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And in the business world, you see these balancing loops absolutely everywhere. Think about managing inventory. You have a desired level of stock you want to keep on the shelves. If your actual inventory dips below that target, it creates a gap, a discrepancy. That discrepancy is a signal that triggers an action. You order more stock, which then brings your actual inventory back up toward your desired level. It's this constant, goal-seeking, stabilizing force. And the visual signature of a balancing loop is this goal-seeking curve. You can see the actual state moving towards the desired state, and then it just levels off. It stabilizes once that goal has been met. Simple and steady. Okay, so we have our two building blocks, the accelerator and the brakes, the reinforcing loop and the balancing loop. Now, this is where it gets really, really cool, because when you start combining these two simple loops, they create these incredibly predictable patterns of behavior. They tell stories that play out over and over and over again in all kinds of different situations. We call these stories archetypes. So let's walk through one of the most common system stories there is, limits to growth. It almost always starts out the same way. You've got this powerful reinforcing loop that's just driving incredible success. Maybe your marketing is on fire, sales are climbing, and you're reinvesting those profits into, you guessed it, more marketing. The growth engine is just roaring. But then something starts to change. Something starts to push back. An invisible balancing loop that you didn't even know was there suddenly kicks in. Maybe your market is getting saturated, or your customer service team is completely overwhelmed, or your factory literally hits its physical capacity. This slowing action starts to counteract all that amazing initial growth. And the result of that story is this classic S-shaped growth curve. You see this incredible, almost vertical growth at the beginning, right? That's the reinforcing loop doing its thing. But then, as that hidden balancing loop starts to take over, the growth slows, and eventually, it just flattens out into a plateau. Hey, remember that company from the beginning of our talk? Ramping up staff was their growth engine, but that dropping customer satisfaction, that was the unseen limit, the balancing loop, pushing back. So when you see this pattern, it doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're hitting a structural limit in your system. And there are tons of these stories. Another classic is fixes that fail. This is where you have a problem, so you slap on a quick, obvious fix. And hey, it works, the symptom goes away for a little while. But what you don't see is that your quick fix has an unintended consequence that, after a time delay, makes the original problem even worse, which, of course, forces you to use that same fix again, digging you deeper and deeper into the hole. Okay, so why does all of this matter? Well, here's the crucial payoff. Once we can start to see these stories, once we can identify the loops that create them, we can finally stop just fighting fires and reacting to symptoms. We can start looking for the real leverage points, those places in the system where one small, well-focused action can create huge, lasting change. The best way to think about this is with the iceberg model. What we see and react to every single day are the events. The tip of the iceberg poking out of the water. We just missed a deadline. A key customer just complained. We react to these events, but it's like trying to sink an iceberg by chipping away at the tip. It's what's easy to see, but it gives you almost zero leverage. Now, if we're smart, we look just below the water surface and we start to see patterns. We notice, hey, we seem to miss deadlines at the end of every quarter, or customer complaints have been trending upwards for the last 6 months. Seeing these patterns gives us a lot more context and a little more leverage to work with. But the real power, the massive, hidden base of the iceberg, is deep underwater. That's the system structure. This is the web of reinforcing and balancing loops that is causing the patterns and events we see on the surface. Now, it's a lot harder to see, for sure, but this is where the highest leverage for real changes. You don't chip away at the tip. You find a way to shift the underlying structure and you change the behavior of the entire system. You change the game. So, I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. Think about that one really persistent, frustrating problem you're facing, maybe at work, maybe in your life. What's the hidden structure driving it? What are the invisible feedback loops, the system underneath the surface, that are keeping that problem stuck exactly where it is?